Hello there. My name is Fergus Fadden, and welcome to my Grammar 101 free e-learning course from my website, the integratedskillsacademy.com. You can reach me for private consultations on fergustrainer@gmail.com. But without further ado, let's jump into the course. So just as a reminder, before we start looking at material, you can find me on all the usual social media. So I am on Twitter, I am on Facebook, my Facebook page, and Instagram. So on Twitter, it's Fergus Teacher. On Facebook, it's Integrated Skills. On Instagram, it's Integrated Skills ESL, and my email, as I mentioned, is fergustrainer@gmail.com. You can email me if you are interested in one-to-one or group training sessions or language preparation, especially for Cambridge exams such as the C2 Proficiency or C1 Advanced or IELTS. So, this course, what's it all about? Well, these lessons aim to help you identify what we can refer to as the 4 parts of speech that occur very commonly in the English language classroom. Now, what do I mean by parts of speech? Well, those are nouns, verbs, adverbs, and adjectives. Now, I should say the parts of speech are not limited to just these 4, but I've identified these as the ones which most commonly occur, and probably the ones which we're at least familiar with these names of parts of speech: nouns, verbs, adverbs, and adjectives. But if you're anything like me, when I was starting out as a teacher, while I roughly knew what these were, I wouldn't have been very confident in always identifying them accurately and being able to use this terminology in a way that was helpful to my learners. So this lesson is part of an overall course. So this set of lessons, I should say, is part of an overall course. Now, the course is broken down into a series of modules. And these are a series of grammar courses delivered by Integrated Skills and myself. Each module will contain the following components. I'm going to show you what are the lessons and the objectives for each lesson. I'll also share with you some material to understand each objective, and then there'll be a short little quiz within the video to help you test your knowledge and see if you have grasped the concept. The course itself, there are 7 lessons in this course. So this free lesson, this one is all about the parts of speech. However, there will be 7 more coming your way, and those include tense and aspect. Lesson 3 will be about modal verbs. Lesson 4 deals with conditionals. Lesson 5 is all about the passive voice. Lesson 6 encompasses adjectives, comparatives, and superlatives. It's kind of an extension of parts of speech, but really getting into the grammar of it. And then we'll have a course summary right at the end. So, without further ado, let's get into lesson 1.1 of parts of speech, and that is starting right here with nouns. So by the end of this lesson, you will have contrasted 4 kinds of words, namely nouns, verbs, adverbs, and adjectives. You'll have applied this knowledge by classifying examples of each and stating their function within sentences. Just a quick word on a piece of terminology here: meta-language. A meta-language is a language used to describe another language, and the other language often being called the object language. If you search for this word on the internet, for example, on Wikipedia, you're going to find something like it's to talk about meta-language is to talk about linguistics. A meta-language is a language used to describe another language. So that's really what we're dealing with here. When we talk about nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, they are a meta language. They are words that we use to describe the object language. In our case, that's English. That's what we're teaching. So this is a word more for you as a teacher. Right? It's not really so necessary for your students to know the word meta language, but it's good for you to have the terminology, what is meta language, right from the get-go, so that you can start to categorize different meta language terminology as you move on throughout your career as a teacher. So let's get started. What is a noun? Well, a lot of us probably know that a noun is a person, place, or a thing. What kinds of nouns are there? Well, there's lots of different ones, but some of the big kinds of nouns would be countable and uncountable nouns. There are also collective nouns, there's abstract nouns, and indeed there are proper nouns. Let's begin by looking at the two most common types of nouns you will deal with as an English teacher. And first of all, we're going to look at countable nouns. So a cat, that is a countable noun. On the other side, uncountable nouns, sometimes referred to as mass nouns. However, your students are going to be more familiar with this term, uncountable nouns. An example would be milk. Now, maybe you might just want to pause the video for a moment and think about, why is milk called uncountable and cat called countable? And when you're ready, unpause the video and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. So countable nouns and mass nouns, sometimes referred to as just count nouns. These are common nouns that can take a plural. You can combine with numbers or counting quantifiers, for example, 1, 2, several, every, most. In this example, we could say 1 cat, 2 cats, several cats, every cat, most cats. And they can also take an indefinite article, such as a cat, or the other indefinite article, an, so an apple, in languages which have such articles. So again, that's English in our case. More examples of countable nouns could be something like chair or nose or occasion. Maybe again, you might like to pause the video and just off the top of your head, without referring to the internet, can you think about any other nouns which you could put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in front of, or several, every, most, a, or an in front of? Those would all be examples of countable nouns. Mass nouns, on the other hand, or uncountable nouns, or just like the other ones, non-count, sometimes they're referred to. These nouns differ from count nouns in precisely that respect. They cannot take plurals or combine with number words or other kinds of quantifiers like I mentioned earlier on. For example, it's not possible to refer to a furniture or 3 furnitures. This is true even though the pieces of furniture comprising furniture could be counted. So, therefore, the distinction between mass and count nouns should not be made in terms of what sorts of things the nouns refer to, but rather in terms of how the nouns present these entities, one might say. Many nouns do indeed have both countable and uncountable uses. So, for example, soda is countable in terms of like, give me 3 sodas. But it's uncountable in the other sense, like, he likes soda. Something worth keeping in mind, and that works very often for these liquids. You could say, if you're at a diner, I'll have a milk, my friend will have a milk, so 2 milks. You could say, but really what's implied there is 2 glasses of milk, or in my soda example, 3 glasses of milk is what's implied, but we're just omitting the word. So moving on, let's talk about collective nouns, and let's look at some examples of collective nouns. A committee was appointed to consider this subject. The committee were unable to agree. So look at how committee was in the singular form and committee were in the plural form. Collective nouns are nouns that, even when they are inflected for the singular, refer to groups consisting of more than one individual or entity. So examples include, like I have here, committee. Government, it could be another one. The government was elected. The government were given the task. The police. There's plenty of examples of these collective nouns. In English, these nouns may be followed by a singular or a plural verb and referred to by a singular or plural pronoun. The singular being generally preferred when referring to the body as a unit, and the plural often being preferred, especially in British variants of English, when emphasizing the individual members. Examples of acceptable and unacceptable use given by one publisher in plain words would include, as I have here, the committee was appointed to consider the subject. The committee were unable to agree. Another one could be, the committee were of one mind when I sat in on them. Let's move on and talk about examples of abstract nouns and talk about what these abstract nouns refer to. So an example of an abstract noun here could be happiness. So let's contrast it with, first of all, what would be a concrete noun as opposed to an abstract noun. Concrete nouns refer to physical entities that can, in principle at least, so this would be, from different schools of philosophy and science, may question the assumption, but for the most part, people agree to the existence of something. So, for example, a rock, a tree, universe. So concrete nouns are these kinds of nouns, regardless of philosophy. These are things that can be observed by at least one of the senses. So more examples could be like chair, apple, Janet, or an atom. Abstract nouns, on the other hand, refer to abstract objects, that is, ideas or concepts, such as justice. While this distinction is sometimes exclusive, some nouns have multiple senses, including both concrete and abstract ones. So, for example, the noun art, which usually refers to a concept. So, for example, art is an important element of human culture, but which can refer to a specific artwork in certain contexts. For example, I put my daughter's art up on the fridge. Some abstract nouns developed etymologically by figurative extension from literal roots. These include drawback, fraction, holdout, and uptake. Similarly, some nouns have both abstract and concrete sentences, with the latter having developed by figurative extension from the former. These include view, filter, structure, and key. In English, many abstract nouns are formed by adding a suffix. So, for example, ness, ness. As in this example, happiness. And these suffixes are added to adjective forms or verbs. Another suffix is, and the famous one, ation, as in circulation. iti as in serenity. So moving on then to what are proper nouns. A lot of us might be familiar with proper nouns. So Brazil is a proper noun. So a proper noun is a name representing unique entities. So for example, Brazil, Pegasus, Jupiter, Confucius. And these are distinguished from common nouns, which describe a class of entities. So for example, a country, animal, planet, person. Okay, so now we have an overview of these different kinds of nouns and what a noun is. Let's move on and talk about where is the noun and what kind is it. So this is a little exercise. Look at this sentence. How much did your car cost? I finally made it onto the team, and justice must be done. I'd like you to pause the video right now and I'd ask you, where is the noun in each of these sentences? Try and identify it. And what kind of noun is it? If you need, you can go back to the previous slide in the video and look at the descriptions of each noun to help you identify it. When you're ready, press play to see the answers. Okay, so for the first one, how much did your car cost? Well, the noun there is car, and the kind is countable. We can say 1 car, 2 cars, 3 cars, most cars, several cars. In the second example, the noun was team, and this is a collective noun. And the last example, the noun was justice, and this was an abstract noun. So just before we wrap up, just a quick reminder about where you can find me on social media, on Twitter at Fergus Teacher, Facebook, Integrated Skills, Instagram, you can find me on Integrated Skills, ESL, and for one-to-one consultations or group consultations for teacher training and language exam preparation, you can contact me on fergustrainer@gmail.com. So just towards a summary of what we covered in this session, we talked about what is a noun. We saw that it's a person, place, or a thing. We saw that there are different kinds of nouns. We saw that there are countable and uncountable, collective, abstract, and proper nouns. Those are not all of the kinds of nouns that there are, but those are some of the big ones that you're going to encounter in your career as a teacher. So thank you very much for going through this online e-learning first lesson on Grammar 101. When you're ready, please continue on to the next lesson.